You ready?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. And then as they enter, we can have them introduce themselves as we go if we want to try to keep track.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Landon Clark with the Sugar House Community Council. Jasmine?
I'm Jasmine Walton with NeighborWorks Salt Lake.
Dorothy?
I'm Dorothy Owen with the West Point Community Council.
Judy?
Here.
Gotta unmute, Judy.
I'm Judy Short from Sugar House.
Gwen?
I'm Gwen Springmeyer, and I will be the chair of the Greater Avenues Community Council starting in December.
Well, welcome. Ellen?
Bonneville Hills Community Council.
Dave?
Dave Alderman, Greater Avenues Community Council.
Turner?
Hi, I'm Turner with the Glendale Community Council.
Suzanne?
I'm just a lurker.
And Lynn?
Lynn Skidmore with West Point Community Council.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks for coming today. So this is the SLCN. It's a Salt Lake Community Network. It's made up of mostly the community council chairs in Salt Lake City. We just thought it'd be pretty cool to invite all of the candidates to come, and we really didn't realize that all of you guys would come. So I think we're missing maybe two. So we're gonna try to get to this pretty quickly. Jasmine's gonna post 2 questions in the chat. You guys have seen them through email, I think, so you should know what you're to expect. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes, 1 for an introduction, 2 for the first question, then 2 for the second question. And then sorry again that we can't get to questions at the end just because of how many candidates are here. We'll have a few people from the mayor's office. We'll have Weston introduce himself quickly. Weston.
Hey, it's Weston Clark, Director of Community Outreach for Mayor Mendenhall.
And Haley. Oh, she's connecting. So we're going to start with Sarah since she has to catch a flight. So Sarah, if you just want to introduce yourself, and Jasmine will keep track of the time for you.
Great. The gate that I was at now has become a plane that's landed and people are getting off. So I apologize. My flight is boarding in about 5 minutes, so it's perfect. My name's Sarah Reel, and I'm running for Salt Lake City Council, District 5. I live in the Ballpark neighborhood, and I'm actually just going to answer your questions and introduce myself and answer both of them at the same time because they go together, I believe. I want to talk about my experience in higher education because I think there are a lot of parallels. I've worked in higher ed for 15 years. I worked at Utah State University doing PR and communications, and then currently I've worked for the last 11 years at Salt Lake Community College as the director of digital marketing, managing web, social, email, PR, and I'm also the public information officer, as well as an adjunct professor in political science. We at the college, I like to see it as a small city. We have 60,000 students, 6,000 employees, and 11 campuses across Salt Lake County, from Harriman to West Point. And we have a variety of diverse departments, from workforce development, curriculum, athletics, small business development. We do it all. So each department has its own priorities and interests, much like a city or in our community councils. And at Salt Lake Community College, we have to work together to fulfill our mission and vision, and of course, to support our students. So in my role, my team and I touch every piece of the college. We have to honor their work, and we have to meet them where they are when planning and strategizing projects and communications. I have to navigate a lot of hard conversations, including changes and new initiatives that affect their work. And I would not be successful in my role if I wasn't skilled at inclusive collaboration. It's also a state institution, and that means I'm well-versed in the red tape, the hierarchy, the processes, the policies, contracts. I understand that things take time. There's a joke that if you ever drug tested in higher ed, the only drug you wouldn't find is speed. And it's true, it's a very long process because we're really inclusive. And in doing so, I have to be really transparent with my decision-making. I have to be clear, and I have to articulate every single decision I make at the college, because that's the way that it works. It's like a big city with all the different departments, and everyone has to work together. We're not a private company where we can just make decisions. All of our work has to be inclusive. So In regards to your second question about communication as well, I'm a professional communicator. It's what I do for a living. I'm experienced in public relations, digital communications, and I've spent my career finding creative and strategic ways to communicate to a variety of audiences, from students to legislators to the media to the community surrounding our campuses, parents, you name it. I'm really, really appreciative of the work of community councils. I respect that work. And I don't think that we could be thriving as well as we are as a city without the work of the community councils. And I just want to thank you all for that. And I want to thank you all for letting me introduce myself and answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a safe flight.
I will, thanks.
All right, I don't see Amy Hawkins yet, so we're gonna go to George Chapman.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead, George.
Okay, I'm George Chapman. I go to most of the city council, community council meetings too. I actually remember Dorothy from 6 years ago at a West Point event. And I write a local news blog at georgechapman.net. I am running mainly because I want to reverse the defunding of the police. It's serious now. Best example is Saturday. They had 2 major accidents, one involving death, and all of Saturday they had to double up and do double shifts because we don't have enough police. I'm also running because I want the city council to stop ignoring the drug dealing and drug abuse in parks and near schools, and allow police walking patrols. I recognize the mayor is working on park rangers, but I want walking police patrols to decrease the drug use. I want drug dogs that the audit recommended, because our homeless shelters are full of drugs. If we don't stop the drug dealers, we're not going to solve the homeless problem, in my opinion. And I also am running to open up housing in Salt Lake City. The 80% of that is not allowed to have housing, to allow housing. That's tens of thousands of acres. Much of it is south of I-80. And instead of going to try to increase density in the single family areas, that area is only 12% of the city. It doesn't make sense when most people really want a detached home, but we only approved 63 last year. So I think the city should reevaluate housing and open up the area south of I-80 to housing. And finally, I want to increase air quality and have all road changes analyzed to ensure that it doesn't increase pollution. The most egregious example is putting in Sharrows on 5th East, which actually makes the bus going south have to go 5 or 10 miles an hour behind a cyclist, because the cyclist has priority. So on your questions that you asked for, I think the best way to influence developers is for the city council to encourage more attendance at the community council meetings. I've been in several community council meetings where there's just 1 or 2 others. And when developers see that, they pretty much think they can get away with anything, and they don't really communicate. Sugar House, Greater Avenues, some of the others have enough attendees. So developers try to work really hard with people like that. Sugar House also puts out a lot of flyers. That helps. But even a community council that doesn't do that needs to have more people, and the city council needs to help on that. They used to have, or a couple of times, they funded newsletters, mailed newsletters, and now the city council can do it twice a year, I think, with the water bills. But the city council should give funding and support publicizing the community councils. I come from a community council background with 300 regular attendees. That's what I'm used to. And I think it's doable, and that would provide more influence to the developers, because developers will pay attention when there are hundreds of people saying yes or no. And that's important. I'd like to see the schools opened up for meetings. We actually went to the legislature and had the legislature change the law to make schools civic centers, so we don't have to pay extra. And the city council actually had an agreement with the school board to allow use of the schools. So right now, the schools are probably the only one that can handle large numbers of people. So I'd like to see more emphasis on that. And the city council, I think, can play a large role in that. So the more attendees, the more influence I think the community councils can have. Those are my comments.
Thank you, George. And George is running for District 5. So now Amy Hawkins is going to come on at the back end of the meeting. So we're going to go to District 2. Dennis?
Hello. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing today? All righty. A couple people are awake anyway. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Most of you know me. Birthed this organization out of the ashes of the previous iteration. I'm very proud of it and what it serves. So if you would like to know more about me personally, feel free to go to my website, VoteenisSLC.com. But I want to get to your questions, talk about the issues. So your first question, community councils having a history to helping to bridge the divide between developers and existing residents. I have to imagine Judy played a role in this question. It is absolutely essential that we as community councils interact with both sides of that equation, that working with developers to be able to come up with a development that can benefit everyone involved. It can certainly be financially beneficial to the developer to develop in your neighborhood, but it has to be supportive of the community and the culture of the community as a whole. So whether it's from making sure there's enough parking or enough units, or that the pricing of those units is adequate, the combination of bringing in retail, multi-use, and a diversification of the housing stock in those projects. So yes, it's very important that those two sectors communicate and collaborate on what happens. Had a fantastic example here in my neighborhood when the developer of the West End project first put the property under contract. And the first thing he did was bring his architect to our community council board meeting. We sat there for 2 hours and they took feedback on exactly, the only question was, what should this be? What does the neighborhood need? And this was honestly just the perfect communication stream. Managed to go through, come up with, we need small local shops. We need a bike shop. We need a coffee shop. We need a small tavern. This developer took all of our input, implemented it beautifully. Those 2 barrel roof buildings have now been renovated and received their certificate of occupancy last week. So now we have spaces available for those types of tenants that in beautiful new buildings. And let's see, jump to the second one real quick. How I communicate and work with community council and residents to ensure positive outcomes. Everything I've always done is about communication and collaboration, working with both sides, with all the sides, taking everybody's input into account, being able to find some middle ground in there. There is no question that everybody is here just because we care. So let's bring to the table what we have in common and start from there. We can build from there. There is always something to be had out of that, a little give and take from each side, and we can come up with something that works well for everybody. Okay, did I have any time left?
Yes, 1 minute.
Oh, I thought I already got my 1 minute warning. All righty, let's see. Lastly, any quick questions from anyone out there?
Come on, Dennis, we're not taking questions.
All right.
Just ramble.
Let's see. Most importantly, vote. District 2 does have historically a low turnout. And I very much hope that with 5 candidates in this district, all actively seeking participation, I really hope that pays off. I want to pay close attention to that, to the numbers that come out of that. and see that we can make some improvement there. If not, then we certainly need to reevaluate that afterwards and figure out what we can change to get more improvement on that front. So yes, please vote, and of course, rank Dennis first on your ballot. Thank you.
Well said. Let's do Alejandro.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Alejandro Puy. I'm running for Salt Lake City District 2 here, obviously, on the west side of Salt Lake. Very quickly, I would like to tell you a little bit about me. I'm an immigrant, as you probably have guessed my accent. I chose the west side as home because it felt like home. It is a place that embraces everybody that lives here. You cannot imagine of a more open-minded and loving community than District 2. So I'm very happy and lucky to live here on the west side. And I'm running for District 2 because I feel frustrated with some of the things that I know that we can do better. And I am not running to give my neighbors excuses about what it cannot be done, but actually to make things happen, to shake the trees and find solutions to the problems that we face. When the city tells me that they don't have resources for a stop sign or a speed bump, or they cannot do this or that, I know that we can. I know that the administration cares, but we just need to remind them that they're representing the issues and they need to find solutions. And that is why I bring to the table. I have, worked very hard in my life to now have a company that dedicates itself to community engagement and policy making. And we are very proud of that ourselves. And to answer the questions very quickly, on the first question, the community engagement is key. Here in our own neighborhood, we put together a neighborhood meeting beyond the community council because we wanted the city to pay attention to a specific area, the North Temple crisis, and that was almost 2 years ago now that we started that process. And I know when you are the squeaky wheel, you make things happen. And I know the community councils have an important role to inform and communicate and seek feedback from the community. So it is very important. But to make changes and to find solutions and to improve the process, I think we need to have a structure process from the developer side to seek community engagement. I know that our city does it through zoning and through the community councils, but we also need to put the developer to do some of this work. We need them to do more work to seek community engagement from the neighbors. We need the engagement to be structured, when the meetings are, the locations, and something that many people don't understand. The west side is unique and it's very different. We have thousands of immigrant families from all nationalities. We have dozens and dozens of languages, and especially Spanish. And much of the information that is out there is not available to them. And we don't understand that people have to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. And sometimes we wonder why they're not participating. They're not participating because they can't. They don't have the time or the energy to do so. We need to do the effort to bring this information to them. We need to make the effort to fix some of these problems and to seek their feedback. I know we can do better on that, and I already found some specific issues in District 2 with ADU process not necessarily be clear in Spanish and not having the information available for people in District 2. 2 families I actually met that they wanted to seek an ADU and they couldn't go through the process because it wasn't in Spanish. And I know that the city means well and they care about this, and I know that they're going to fix it. But I think this is a good example of how the barrier we are seeing between in communication, and that's what I bring to the table since my background as an immigrant and obviously as a Spanish speaker as my first language, as you probably can tell. As far as question 2, all of a sudden my Spanish came out. As far as question 2, regular meetings with community councils is important. We should, your council members should have regular meetings, schedule, structure. It happens regularly, no matter what, with the community councils they belong to. And also, something that happens a lot is we we have projects that by themselves are not necessarily bad. There are good projects, but we are forgetting sometimes the bigger picture. And I know that's something that is very important, right? Like a project by itself and within one community council might not have a negative effect on a community, but maybe the group of projects together are different. So sometimes we need to look at the bigger picture, and that's why we need to engage more of all of the community councils together. I think that there is so many ways of improving communication. I am a person that is not arrogant at all. I don't come to the meeting thinking that I have all the answers. I seek input. I try to be as responsive as humanly possible. I respond to all emails and calls, and that's who I am as a person in general. So to me, we need council members that do that and they care about responding to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Billy Palmer.
Hi there. Some of you I know and some I don't, so I'll quickly introduce myself. And how long do we have here on this? Is it 3 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, great. Yes, I'm Billy Palmer. I grew up on the west side of Salt Lake City, mostly in Glendale, where I live now, and I raised my kids. I am a community organizer. I'm an advocate for a number of causes. I've also been a radio journalist. I just resigned from that to run for office. And, it's a really important conversation for me when we do talk about development and the relationship between community and developers. And I think one of the things that the West Side could use, or our entire neighborhoods use, is city council folk who have a broad knowledge of housing and economic development needs in their neighborhood, that are talking to their neighbors and making sure that they are hearing from their neighbors on what they're actually wanting before we even have those conversations with developers. I think making sure our zoning fits what the neighbors want. So I think somebody that's really involved. I think one of the things, and this is not a knock on anybody at all, it is the culture of city council that we have folks that have really important jobs and do really important things, and then they are also city council folk. It's a little tough. I'm so glad that they have raised the wages of city council folks so that they, for me, it's pretty close to a livable wage. And so 10 years ago, I wouldn't have run for city council. In fact, I was asked if I would. And I didn't, because I had a family and I had a regular job, and I didn't feel like I could give to city council what it needed. And, that's one of the things to me is being connected to your community is so important. And it takes time to build those relationships and make sure that you're serving your community by spending time with the folks on the ground. And to me, that's, kind of how I feel like I want to approach it. And I am, like I say, I'm grateful that we have changed a little bit how city council works. But that to me is one of the things is understanding what the community is asking for, what the community needs. And as we talk to developers, I mean, there's great examples along the west side of positive development. And there's examples of things that people didn't ask for. We have, streets where there's, home ownership, 3-story apartment, home ownership, single family housing in between, where we didn't develop where those people were going to be able to park. And so all the parking is completely gone for the people that live in those houses. Many of those houses don't even have driveways or garages. And so that's one example where we could have benefited by more communication and more planning from city council to community. And then we have to remember that sometimes government agencies like the city or the state are also developers on our side of town. And to tell you the truth, the library in Glendale is one of the best examples of engaging community and making sure it's what the community wanted. So that's pretty much my whole belief on city council. And like I say, I don't mean to knock anybody. I think that our city council members are diligent, hardworking folks, and you know that they have their hearts in the best place, and they do incredible work for the city. But I think what I'm bringing is that I can treat city council like my primary job. And that is not meant as a knock on anybody. It's just something that I get to do almost as a privilege, really. So as far as the second question, as a city council member, how will you communicate and work with our community council and residents to ensure positive outcomes for residents of our neighborhoods? And I'll tell you the truth, what I think is really important to understand is people don't feel like they want to get engaged if they don't know what they do will cause positive change in their neighborhoods. And I think that's the only thing that's lacking on the west side, is that people don't realize that the things that they can do. I know I only have a few seconds left. The things they can do with their community councils can really benefit. And I think making sure that we're showing people what their work does in their communities as they volunteer will help to build more involvement from community. But we need more involvement on the west side, and that's one of the things I want to focus on.
That's time.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Nigel.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nigel Swift. You know that because I've been part of this group for about 4 years now. First as chair of the River District Chamber, and then as chair of the Fair Park Community Council. My family moved to Salt Lake when I was about 6 years old, and I grew up on the west side. I went to West Side Public Schools. I was in second to the last graduating class of South High School, which was closed at the end of 1988. So having this opportunity to represent the neighborhoods that I grew up in is something that I couldn't pass up. You also know that I'm very active in community organizations, and so my background and skills are definitely fit for this. I'm going to go straight to question one, which is an absolutely fantastic one, because I've been on both sides of this as a community council member, as well as a public outreach for a project in the Avenues that is probably one of the most contentious ones in the city right now, as Dave Alderman knows. And it was important for me to get involved with that project, because a few years before that, Ivory had proposed a project in my area on North Temple, and the city ended up blocking it, buying the property, which is the Overnighter Motel, and it sits right now a pile of rubble 4 years later. And I can't help but think that if the developer in that instance had better public outreach at the time, that we would be seeing, the 250 units, if I recall correctly, on the market right now, instead of an absolutely useless piece of ground. So I think public outreach for developers is highly critical. Absolutely. In our area, we've got about 2,000 units within a quarter mile of where we meet as a community council, either in the planning process, in the construction process, or having recently gotten their certificate of occupancy. Some of them have been contentious, like the Kozo apartments, which did not reach out to community council at all. They did have some changes that needed to be made and were turned down by Planning Commission. There was a lot of community pushback on that. And then there's others like Oz Development who develop by right. So they don't make any changes to the code, and they just build what's already there. And they don't have to have that public engagement, though they have to a certain extent on their project at the former Arctic Circle. So I'm glad to see developers do that and see themselves as community partners and reach out to us. I think that's really critical. One thing that I've noticed, whether it be East Side residents in the Avenues or West Side residents in Fair Park, we're afraid of change. That is the biggest fear. And we throw up these, they're smoke screens really in terms of what the true objections are: parking, density, traffic, too many people in a house. And they are based on real concerns, but there are a lot of things these days that help reduce the actuality of those things happening. So I'm going to go to the second question in terms of communication. I think as a marketer, you have to communicate in the medium that your audience likes. And for some people, that's in person. I do the best there. For our community council, where we have older members, we've brought back a print version of our Gazette, but we also have a PDF version of it for email. The telephone works. Showing up to community council meetings is a huge thing for city council. We have in Fair Park, we have 3 city council reps. One of them I haven't seen in over a year. He's no longer on the city council. One of them I've seen once on Zoom this year. And the other one, who has been showing up since he was appointed in May. And his predecessor was the chief one that showed up to us as well. I am really hopeful that with this redistricting process that we will go down to 2, maybe even just 1, because I don't think that District 3 can adequately represent the eastern part of Fair Park. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, Amy, are you ready? So now we're going to move to District 7.
I am ready, I think.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amy Fowler. I am running for re-election for District 7. I'm currently the council member representing the area. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna talk a little bit about me in case you don't know. I started my law career I'm a lawyer by trade or something. I started as an intellectual property lawyer in a big firm downtown, and I would sit in my 14-story office and look down on people walking or living on Main Street. And I remember very clearly calling my best friend, crying, and I was like, this isn't why I went to law school, to make rich people richer. This is against everything I believe. And so I was incredibly upset about things. And I ran into one of my other friends, and he looked so happy. He's a lawyer. And I was surprised that as a lawyer, he looked happy. And I said, why, how are you so happy? And he said, well, I work for the public defender's office. And I said, done. I am applying. And I got the job, and I called my partner and said, hey, is it okay if I take a 60% pay decrease so that I can be a public defender? And she said, are you going to stop crying every time you come home from work? And I said, I think so. And I left and became a public defender, and I was there for 5 years. And it is by far one of the greatest jobs I've ever had the opportunity to do, to represent people that are in the worst place of their life, and many of whom, while we may judge them, many of whom have ended up there for reasons beyond what we could imagine. And when I left the public defender's office to start my own law firm almost 3 years ago, we still only practice criminal defense. And the reason is because, again, we find people in their worst times, and we get to tell their stories. We get to be their voice. We get to make sure that they are actually heard. And that's why I ran for city council the first time, and why I'm running again now. So going to the questions, the first question about planning and development. One of the things that maybe people don't know about me, but hopefully some do, is that I like to describe myself as a loudmouth, opinionated, awkward girl, because that's who I am. And I think that I've made that very clear among developers, that I don't stand for not creating a public benefit. If you come to the city to ask us for a zone change or money, then there better be affordable housing and there better be a public benefit. And as far as the work that our community councils do, the very first question I ask when any developer is developing in Sugar House is, have you talked to Judy Short? End of story. You can ask any developer if that is the first question I ask. And then I say, what is the feedback that we've gotten from community councils? Have you presented at the community council? Have you made changes according to the community council? And I do not back down if that hasn't been done. I have very distinctly told developers that I don't even need to talk to them if they haven't gone to the community council yet. And I stand by that because I do know and appreciate the work that the community council puts in to these developments and to the time that is taken when looking at our neighborhoods. When we look at zoning, I turn to the expertise of our community council members. As for the second question regarding communication, I'm going to be really honest here and very vulnerable. Again, another thing that is just me and who I am. I've been criticized for this, that I haven't communicated enough. And it actually came as a surprise to me when I heard these criticisms, because I go to almost every, in almost 4 years, I've been to almost every community council meeting. Not all, but I would say a good 90% of them. And when the community members reach out to me and say, hey, we have a problem on our street, we need you to come and meet with a bunch of neighbors. Did you say time?
Yeah, time.
Okay, I'm going to improve on this.
All right, let's go to Ben Raskin.
Hey, Landy, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Just double check with the internet connection here. Hi, my name is Ben Raskin. I'm running for Salt Lake City Council for District 7. I was born in El Cajon, raised in Las Vegas, went to college in Reno, and I've been living in Salt Lake City for the last 22 years. I've been a bartender for about the last 20 years until the pandemic. But in the intermediate time, we're at my cubicle here at USANA Health Sciences, where I am the senior communications writer for our large international company. I wouldn't be running this race if it wasn't for the community council. Because during the pandemic, I think for a lot of us, it's like the community council was our connection to our neighbors and friends in our area. And I think when I decided to throw my hat into the ring to actually run for this office, I knew that I needed to leverage everything that the Sugar House Community Council has helped me as both a resident and a candidate for the office. And it started with having Detective Menzer giving police reports, and so when I wanted to run, I called him up and went on a ride along, learned about how the PD needs to have adequate funding, bring it back the resources they need, look at alternative policing. When I asked Detective Menzer, who should I talk to next? I was talking to Chief Dan Walker, the fire department, where we understand the connectivity between the fire department in Salt Lake City and the other municipal areas. Reached out to Laura Briefer, the public utilities area, to understand the importance of water and why we need to make sure that we preserve and protect water so our parks have adequate grass areas, so our kids have places to play. And then the big thing is that I reached out to past city council members, and I want to thank Soren Simonson. He has not endorsed me, I want to be clear, but he was very kind to spend an afternoon with me as we walked up and down the S line when he was talking about what it took for him to get that into place, and then what that means for Sugar House in and of itself. And the word that he used over and over again, which is what I've been learning every single time that I've been knocking on doors and meeting with people, is connectivity. It's like, how does development in our area connect with the current residents, and how are we connecting into the future? How does this look in our neighborhood? Do we have the aesthetics that we want to have to make a Sugar House a unique, funky kind of place to live? How does this connect with our UTA passes? It's like, I'll tell you, the one complaint that I've heard from countless people has been the fact that there's not nearly enough adequate parking in the community, or they feel as if there's not. And so how can we work with the developers to make sure that UTA is included into us? And then when you think about when they're building our large high rises, these high density units in our community, they're not building backyards. And so obviously they're going to be reaching out to our parks. So, I think it's really important, the work that Judy Short is doing with the land use and zoning is like, how does these new constructions impact our open spaces? How are we still going to be able to preserve this? And so moving forward, I would, if I was lucky enough to be elected, I would work with the developers to make sure that every decision made in the area has an element of connectivity, both with the past of our community as where we'd like to build into the future. I think one of the most important things as a city council member is that you're going to be having lots of folks come at you. They're going to have lots of questions. They're going to have lots of concerns. And what we need to do is make sure that we can direct them to get the right resources, or to go get the resources for them, or vote upon it in the city council. And so tying into what you guys are doing with community council, which I absolutely love, is that if elected, I'm going to host quarterly town halls. I love the format of the community council meetings, but I think we need to have open forums where people come in there and bitch and moan about what they dislike about the area, and then basically figure out ways that we can resolve these issues that they're concerned about. Knocking on doors, I've learned things that I never even thought were problems, because these are the things, when you look at it from everywhere, from the Green Street all the way up to the Country Club, Westminster, down to Brickyard, is that while we all in District 7, we are an individual, we're very diverse. We have lots of opinions. We have lots of thoughts of how we would like the community to look. And so I think having open forum town halls that I would be hosting would be a chance for people to bring their concerns to us, and then we could follow up with them the next quarter. And then in addition, bring them to the Sugar House Community Council when you give an opportunity to speak as the member. I love the newsletter that you guys do. I'd be having a second newsletter with more links and resources that we'd be able to connect them to. And I think as a communications writer for USANA, that I would take that ability to talk to any voice, personality, individual in our community, and make sure they know that we're looking after them, we're doing our very best. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this: start asking for Raskin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see Rainier Huck, so we're going to go to District 1. Blake?
Morning, everybody. Thanks for hosting this. My name is Blake Perez. I know many of you. I am running for Salt Lake City Council for District 1. I had the honor of serving as chair for the Rose Park Community Council from 2013 to 2017, and was actually a trustee of the Salt Lake Community Network for a year back in, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16. So thanks to Dennis Ferris, these meetings are no longer at 7 a.m. and they're at 9 a.m. And I think that's probably why we have great participation today. So I am running because I want to improve and protect our health, well-being, and prosperity for the residents of District 1. We've knocked on over 7,000 doors since April, and our platform is about our air quality, the inland port, cost of housing, helping those experiencing homelessness, and public safety, and being responsive to our needs. I think, my experience as a Rose Park Community Council chair is going to be pivotal when I'm elected council member. And I have a great example of when, we had to lead a project in our neighborhood. I have, experience delivering projects that has improved the quality of life in our neighborhood. Back in 2016, we applied for funding for a crosswalk at 600 North and 8th West, and we were denied funding through the CIP process. And that's when I asked my neighbors to organize. We started the Slow Down 6 North campaign, and we gathered over 600 signatures on a petition, dozens of emails sent to City Council, and we showed up to City Council one night to let our voices be heard. And that project was funded, and we've got more to do on 600 North, and I'm excited about that. And when I'm a council member, I look forward to getting that project across the finish line. I started my professional career as a nonprofit professional, helping low-income households developing financial assets. I was a transportation planner for Salt Lake City Corporation for 4 years. My primary job was working on the Hive Pass program. And we talked a little bit about connectivity. One thing that I'd like to do as a council member is have developers include the Hive Pass in their proposals. That was something that I did as a city staffer. It never got traction with the planning department or the administration at the time. That's something that we can do, is put transit passes in people's pockets close to frequent transit network. And now I'm serving as the deputy director for the Central Wasatch Commission, working on land use protections, transportation, recreation, and economic development up in the Central Wasatch Commission, or in the Central Wasatch Mountains, excuse me. Let's see here. So the first question is about that, again, the connectivity of these different silos, from my opinion, about boards and commissions that are appointed and the representatives from each of the districts, and how are they working with the community councils. I would like to do, as a city council member, fund some projects that allow for different districts, different communities to do asset mapping and community visioning as a reiterative process every 5 years. We're learning quickly that our neighborhoods and our cities are changing quickly. A 20-year plan is not very up to date. So continuing to do that asset mapping and community visioning, I would like to improve. During my time as the chair of the community council, I noticed the silos between the representatives on the boards and commissions and the community council. I tried really, really hard to bridge that. And so I'd like to see more dialogue between the community councils and those representatives, not just the city council members. One thing when it comes to developers is I also think that for Rose Park Community Council, Wednesday night meetings at 6:30 to 8 o'clock are not convenient. I have a track record as chair of doing things outside of the box to get more people to participate. And that's what I would like to encourage developers and our community to do. Let's do more site visits. Let's revisit our community visioning and asset mapping, what fits within our communities. And I think we need to expect more from developers than just showing up to a community council meeting. I think that's the bare minimum. I think that there should be more. What can I do to make sure, as a city council member, that the community council is being involved and we're hearing about them? And like I said, I really believe in doing more outside of the traditional modes of communication to get participation. I really enjoy community walks in my neighborhood. Back when I was chair, we did a Jane Jacobs walk in our community. We talked about future development, what we would want in our neighborhood, and that got people out and engaged. So doing more stuff like that, community cleanups, projects like Paint the Pavement, that gets people out. You have an opportunity to develop that one-on-one relationship and hear from them. I am also really high on developing a bench of future leaders for our community, not for city council, but developing leaders who will, be a city council member, who will participate in community council. Oh, okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Let's go to Victoria.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Victoria Petro Ashler. I'm running in District 1. I moved here in 2013, and I've run a small nonprofit in the area offering free after-school music to kids, working with senior citizens. Anyone who's in a margin, we use music to build community with them. I also have 3 young children who attend Mary W. Jackson Elementary in the area. And when I moved here, I realized I had never seen anything like a community council setting ever. It was the most unique and uniquely Utah thing I've ever seen. The community council at Fair Park has always reached out excellently. And so when I was launching the nonprofit, they were really helpful in connectivity and making sure that I knew stakeholders I needed to know. And I'm really thankful for that. As I come into this potential new role, I really want to engage with the community councils the same way I'm engaging with every neighbor, which is just on a platform of responsiveness and centering the voices of those who know. Before I even decided if I was going to do this, I was fortunate enough to meet by phone. And in the case of Miss Dorothy, we even got some Denny's together, and to just hear, there is so much expertise and knowledge in my area, and the people who show up consistently and work on the community councils hold so much of that knowledge. And when they don't have knowledge, I find that their intentions for improving the community are so aligned that they're so receptive to input and always working to optimize. So I'm really enthusiastic about the community council system and getting to work alongside it, getting to work integrated with it to promote positive outcomes. I am a communicator. Every person in my district who I've spoken to has gotten my personal cell phone number. Every person on the community council right now has my personal cell phone number, and many of them are already using it regularly. And so communication is pivotal in everything that I do, and I'm going to show up. Showing up 2 months ago at the first in-person Fair Park meeting, I learned about a project that's actually in District 2, but that would put 35 micro units with not one parking spot in an already saturated area. Through that, I was able to connect with other people in the community and really look at how this development thing, which is coming fiercely for the West Side, is really impacting the day-to-day life. So I've been the historic landmark representative for District 1 for 4 years now. And through that, I've developed some really great relationships with developers. And the truth is, they want to engage with us. We just need to make it a priority for the city council position, for the community council position, for any stakeholders in the community who are engaged, to serve as a conduit from those who are on the ground and those who want to be a part of developing. And I'm looking forward to being responsive to my community council leaders. And listening to them in how best to do that. I am not coming in with a prescriptive approach to this. I am coming in with a responsive approach. We are in the thrust of change here. And if I come in with all the solutions, I am certainly going to be ill-equipped for this job. Instead, I'm coming in with a vast amount of knowledge and experience, and with the relationships that have been developed so that we can maintain the flexibility and we can maintain the unity required to ensure positive outcomes for the whole family, for the whole community. Other things I'd like to see are, I want the community councils to have access to consistent funding bases. As a small nonprofit executive, I understand how even those small micro grants from the city can be so powerful in giving autonomy and allowing us to respond to our communities. And I want to make sure that stays consistent. And I'm going to allow my community council people to lead out on these issues. How I'm going to communicate within the first month, I'm having all 4 of my community council members over for dinner that I'm going to cook for them, and I'm going to listen. And I'm fortunate enough to have relationships with the 2 from District 2 as well. So I'll be having them over and I'm going to listen. And then together we're going to vision what we need, and we're going to create solutions together that are responsive to our actual needs, to our actual constituents and friends. And we're going to vision how to make those community councils places where even more people feel at home, empowered, and welcome. So thank you so much for your time this morning. Vote Victoria SLC for more information.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to switch to District 3. So Chris Wharton, you ready?
You have
You're
to
muted, Chris.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's great to be with you all again. So for those that don't know me, I'll do a quick introduction. My name is Chris Wharton. I am the current council member for District 3, serving in my first term and running for re-election. I'm a 6th generation Utahn and was born in District 3. And I am an attorney is my other full-time job. In addition to the council is I have my own small firm. I do mostly family law and LGBTQ advocacy. And I've used those skills as an attorney to advocate for the main issues that are that District 3 residents care about, which are affordable housing, sustainability, safe neighborhoods, and investing in our parks and arts and historic preservation. At the same time, I've also tried to set a new standard for responsiveness and engagement with the community on my time on the council. So all of my residents have my personal cell phone. I try to personally respond to the message that I get from the emails and messages that I get from my residents on on all of the social media platforms, which is a lot to cover. And I think that the other times that I've used my skills as an attorney have been in working with developers. When you have when you're in family law, a lot of times you have two parties that couldn't be on further ends of the spectrum, it seems, but they're still bound together because they have a child in common. And as a divorce attorney or a family law attorney, I don't want to do a scorched earth between the parties, and because someday the litigation is going to end and they're going to have to work together. And I think that that is true with a lot of these projects that we see in neighborhoods that that start out worlds apart. And we as council members and community members and community council leaders have that obligation to try to find a path forward. If the development is going to go forward, find a way to make it work for everyone. I think that community council's input is critical to that. And as an attorney, I care very much about process. I think process is everything, and ensuring that the community councils are always an integral part of that process is something that I have fought for in the council and will continue to fight for. I've also started asking when the council has advice and consent over nominees to the planning commission from the administration. I started asking all of those nominees for their input and their philosophy on community input and resident feedback for projects, because I want to know that ultimately, yes, it's the council's job to represent those, to represent our constituents, but I want to know that planning commissioners and the planning division is taking that feedback from the residents at the early stages, and that's interwoven throughout the process, not just something to put as bookends, like at the beginning and the end with the community council and the city council. Like Councilmember Fowler said, I also always ask when developers want to meet with me or talk to me about a project, the first thing I say is, I need you to meet with the community councils first, and I need you to be prepared to incorporate their feedback into your design and into your proposal if you want to meet with me or when you come to the council. Because again, I want it to start there at that organic level with the community. And I want to set the expectation that, at least for me, when I go to vote, I want to know and I want to see a demonstrated commitment to working with the community and incorporating their feedback into a project. And in terms of the second question, I have consistently attended all of my community council meetings in the district. I have 3 primary community councils. I think I've only missed 2 or 3 meetings in the 5 years that I've been going to those. I would agree though with Blake and suggest perhaps changing the time of the Rose Park one, because it's exactly at the same time as the avenues. And I have a teeny part of Rose Park and I'm not ever able to attend because I have the avenues at the same time.
That's time, Chris.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right, let's go to Casey.
Hey. Hello, everybody. I'm Casey O'Brien McDonough, one of the other candidates for District 3. And a little background specific to this group. A large share of my work experience has been in architecture and construction. I started drafting for an architect when I was 15, which was a while ago. And I've been on both sides of development. I've been on the side of developers trying to convince community councils that they should support their project. and I've been on development projects where developers don't care what the community council thinks, and they just press forward. It's been interesting because that sometimes it takes longer, but the developments that have garnered the input and made modifications and changes, in my opinion, have always been better, if only because they had more buy-in from the community. It's interesting to think about, the two questions, the one about community council input I've been thinking about recently. From the recent experience, I gave input and helped a little bit push the planning commission one way or another on the Bueno Ave development project that was proposed. I've talked to people about the Ivory Homes one as well, up in the avenues, and I always start from the position that that all developers buy property knowing full well how it's encumbered, whether it's in a historic district, whether it's a zoning that they want to try to get extra on. And so if we start there, and then also start on the fact that residents should always have the most important voices in decisions that are made about zoning changes, about zoning exceptions, about what I've been calling recently extra, because that in its effect what developers are often asking for. So if you're asking for extra, I think we need to ensure that the community's on board, that we have buy-in in the moment. We have a lot of great master plans, and I agree with the comment made that we need to update a lot of those plans more often. 20 years is a long time, especially when our city's changing so quickly. But I think having community council input is a primary way to connect with our neighborhoods. I talk to a lot of people who see the change happening. Their opportunity to give input passes by because we all have our lives. We have families, we have jobs. Some people simply don't have time. And so I think just as a city council person represents their district, a community council represents their district. And I think we should give that representation more teeth. We've been talking a lot about encouraging developers, right, to seek out community council input. I think we can make that a requirement more often than we currently do, so that developers know that they need to obtain buy-in, and that it's going to be a requirement for them to get more height or more density or less parking, because it's all of those things are primarily affecting the residents of a neighborhood that live in the neighborhood, that have made their lives in the neighborhood, and that's, I think, a reason why you all serve the way you do on community councils, is because all of these changes, especially at the speed that they're happening in this current economic and real estate environment, it can be worrisome because you can see your neighborhood change. You can see tall buildings go up next to single family homes and affect people's lives in a real meaningful way. There's also an interesting, we all see this with planning commission and other bodies like that, where you set a precedent. They give an exception and then they start using it, just like we do in the law, to support the next decision that aligns with the last decision. And I see that often as a concerning kind of way that our planning commission or our elected bodies, or excuse me, elected officials work. By saying, well, we gave more density already, so we should give more density again, or we gave this guy an exception for a 20-foot retaining wall. Let's give another one because we did it before. So I think if we always start with the community councils, start with the residents, give these bodies, all these community councils, more teeth in our process, for planning commission, historic landmark commission, other bodies that are giving people something more than what property is currently zoned for. I think that's something that I would work towards on the city council. So thanks for listening, and appreciate you guys having us all.
Thank you. David Berg.
Hello, thank you. I very much appreciate this. I remember these meetings or a variation thereof when I was chair of the community council for Central City Community Council in the early 2000s. My name is David Berg. I'm running for District 3. I'm a healthcare worker, currently working at 4th Street Clinic. So I work with our unhoused population daily. I see their challenges and I know the solutions. I know there are no easy solutions, but I've got some ideas of things that we can implement for not only the homeless challenge we're facing now in Salt Lake City, but so many of our other challenges. My heritage goes back in Salt Lake City pretty deep to 1892 when my great-grandparents moved here from Logan, where they'd originally immigrated to the States. They actually moved to the same address I'm working out of now at 4th Street Clinics. So it's kind of a fun turn of events there, and I was pretty surprised when I learned that about a year ago. I'm engaged, I'm experienced, and I'm principle driven. I'm on the city council. I'll fight for Salt Lake City values, and I'll make sure that I am listening to community council voices first. When developers come to the city council, I think it's just absolutely fundamentally important that they first stop and check with the community councils. I absolutely recognize that importance, again, as a former chair of the community council in Central City. Let's see, and I'll also be sure that not only have they gone before the community council first, before the city council, but I'll make sure that I understand what happened at the community council, and I'll reflect the views and opinions and input that was given at the community councils. I've been to, of course, I've been part of my community council. I'm living in the Avenues currently, but I've also been to the other 3 community councils that make up part of District 3, both the Avenues Community Council, the Capitol Hill Community Council, and the Fair Park Community Council. You heard from Nigel earlier that the current incumbent, unfortunately, has been absent for the last year from that community council. He just told you differently, but Nigel, Nigel's the head of the community council, and he knows who's been there and who hasn't been there. And I've been there since I've been running for this district, unlike our current incumbent. But I welcome you to come back, Chris. We'll have an open door for you this couple of weeks here at the Fair Park Community Council. In addition to community council, I'll have an open door meeting policy, and I'll meet with residents monthly in different neighborhoods, rotating neighborhoods of the district, in addition to the community council meetings. I'll also expand on something that Alejandro had mentioned. I'll make sure that we're communicating with residents in a language they feel comfortable with, and ensure that we can receive their feedback in whatever language they use. When developers come before the city council, I'll also know the numbers. When they say, oh, it's X% of AMI, what does that mean? When we're calling something affordable, it doesn't really apply if you call it affordable. This is, of course, speaking of housing, which is #1 issue right now. We need to be on top of that. Right now, you can ask any of the city council members, what does affordable mean? And they'll say, oh, some random percentage of AMI. Well, what's AMI? Most of them don't even know what AMI is. Of course, it's 65,000 to 92,000 right now, which is just unrealistic. I will fight to use federal poverty level as a measure of affordability, which is understandable by all and more reflective of those caught in the housing crunch. So speaking on that, with the homeless issue, I think we need to take a more creative housing first approach, and we need to address the roots of homelessness. We need to have better mental health resources available, and we need to have addiction and recovery services available right now when someone's on the street. Well, thank you, David for SLC. Appreciate your time.
Okay, so now we're going to go to District 5. We're going to have Darren Mano go next. Is he still on?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks, Landon.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And thank you for letting me join a little bit late. I was at a previous meeting that I had already scheduled. It was a tour of the Odyssey House, but I'm Darren Mono. I'm the current city council member. I was appointed in January of 2020, which I don't think could have been worse timing in terms of a soft landing into the city council. But I have really enjoyed this role. And I think the first question that you've asked us to answer is a really good one. My experiences, I'm a licensed architect. I have my own firm here in Salt Lake City. And as an architect, we are always in the position of dealing with what the developer wants, what the city wants, what the community is asking for, and what is actually best for the city. So, we're in some ways the trained professional that's supposed to balance all of those issues. And I use those same skills as in my work on the city council to try and balance the community's needs, what the future goals of the city are, what our city master plans say, and what the developer is asking for. And as recently as this Tuesday, I was able to negotiate. There was a developer that had asked for a change from RMF 45 to form-based urban 2 over by 21st South and 2nd East. And there wasn't a lot of community engagement in that one, but there was one resident that had sent a letter, and I called them up, had a conversation with them, and they were really excited about the project, just worried about the parking issue. Parking's not an issue that for me personally is ever my biggest concern, but it is for a lot of communities, and it was for this resident. And so I called the developer and asked if he would be okay with the development agreement to require parking. There's not really a good middle ground between RMF 45 and form-based 2. And the biggest difference is that the form-based 2 doesn't require any parking. And so I was able to negotiate between those two competing needs. And those are some things that we've done on other projects, and that I'll continue to do in my roles on the city council. And I think I understand those zoning ordinances to a much deeper level than most people do, most other anybody, because that's my day job. Is I'm looking at zoning ordinances in all of the state and trying to figure out how those are balanced with and what those actually mean on the ground. And so figuring out why the developer is asking for A instead of B, and then understanding their goals and then understanding the goals of the community, I can usually find a middle ground there. So that's something that's really important to me. When there are more sort of high profile cases, I've actually made a spreadsheet and tracked all the positive and all the negative comments. And I researched those people and figured out whether they live in the district, whether they live in the city, where they come from, are they the applicant, and really tried to get a full picture using that data of who's actually reaching out to us. And I've tried to make decisions based on that data. So that's some of the ways that I think with my professional experience, I really can help bridge that gap between the community and the developer. And that's what I've tried to do and will continue to do. In terms of communication, I have done what I call D5 download with Darren, which is basically a town hall. And I do that quarterly. Started virtual, and we're now moving into coffee shops. It's just a low key, show up, ask questions if you want, and have a cup of coffee with me and let's chat. So I've been doing that quarterly. I also try to attend as many community council meetings as possible. I have 6 that I represent, 3 that I am the only council member that represents, and 3 others that I have a piece of. And I've tried to go to as many of those as possible. I even showed up to Central City Community Council, and they said, "What are you doing here? You don't have anything to do with us." And I actually do have a small part of Central City that overlaps with Liberty Wells technically. So I try to go to all of those meetings, and I try to engage as much as possible. I'm a relationship person and a people person, so getting me on the phone or face-to-face is best. And so COVID has been a challenge, but I've started to get a better system with my email inbox, making sure I'm not missing emails and making sure that I'm responding as quickly as possible. In terms of social media, the best way to engage with me is on my council member Facebook page. And I actually do a Facebook live stream after every single council meeting where I give a recap of what we did and a little bit more of what's interesting to me about those decisions and where my brain is at, and ask for feedback. I think I only have a couple of minutes left. And so I actually want to use that time to say, Chris Wharton has been kind of a mentor to me since I've been on the council. And I know for a fact that he does engage with his community to a level that makes me feel inferior sometimes, because I hear him talk about how much time he spends responding to residents. So I just want to say that the narrative that he doesn't go to community councils is not true. He's been a mentor to me, so I wanted to just sort of give him a shout out.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Daniel, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hi, everybody. I'm Daniel Tutau. I'm running in District 2. Thanks for letting me join. I have like one monthly meeting and it's like right at the same time. So I was glad you guys added an extra half an hour so I can join in. You've already heard from all my fellow running mates. I appreciate that District 2 has such a great representation, both here today with us, as well as just, you know, the quality. You saw the quality of candidates that we have there. I'm from Los Angeles, California originally. I've lived in the West Side here for about 10 years. I live in Poplar Grove, and I'm actually a musician, as well as work with nonprofits here in the Valley. So I'm not really have a background in any of this politician type stuff, but I'm excited for the opportunity to throw my hat in the ring as at least a way of, you know, standing up for a few things that I care about in my community. With the question that's been posed, it's a great question. And, you know, again, the few answers that I've been hearing are definitely things that are really important. I think setting realistic expectations are really important, and communicating, obviously visiting with the community councils, with everyone that's represented here is very important. But also, you know, trying to have the message that, right, everyone's not going to be happy, right? You can't find an answer that makes the developers 100% happy, as well as the community 100% happy, except in some very slim cases that happens, right? There has to be some compromises that happen, and no one likes to take a compromise, but understanding why that has to happen, I think, is important. And, you know, the question was talking about the countless hours spent with developers, getting that feedback, and feedback is important. You know, and just working that out. Like, I love the alliteration in Darren's, you know, downloads, D5 downloads, or whatever he had there. And I think that's important, is having feedback outside of community council as well. Because I mean, I love hearing about what's going on with my community council. I make it out. I mean, you know, I read up as much as I can, but I'm busy with stuff, and as a lot of the members of our neighborhoods are. And, you know, you know, you get 15, 20, 30 people, 40 people in a community council. That's a pretty good turnout for at least for Poplar Grove's community council. But, you know, you have tens of thousands of people in those neighborhoods. And so finding more ways of getting that collaboration, that feedback is important. Thinking outside the box, learning from each other, I think, is important. I love the different proposals that have been thrown out there. As a community council member, I think, just like I said, having that communication with the residents so that they know their voice is heard, and understood, and explaining to them when we can't compromise. Or on the other side, you know, explaining to developers when you have to shoot them down because we say that the community can't handle that. I mean, it's a case by case basis. There is no straight answer to say that, well, we do A, B, and C and everything's going to work out. But I think when people understand what's going on, they're able to have empathy. They're able to have sympathy and agree with things that they might not always agree about. I'm a big communicator. I love to talk, but I love to listen as well. And, you know, I think everyone here that's giving of their time is of the same ilk. But I think the problem is trying to reach out to those that don't feel like speaking up, or they just carry with them the feelings of neglect. I know I'm speaking from the West Side, where we kind of, I mean, that's kind of a general, malady that we have over on our side of town, is feeling like we don't have a say in things, and helping people to understand what exactly that means is really important to me. Getting out when something's being built to try to connect with people in those neighborhoods, specifically in those few streets where that's strongly going to be impacted, is important. And more than just I mean, we have to try the different methods. Facebook works for a certain demographic. Door hangers work for a different demographic. Not one answer works for everyone. And I think we're continually learning what that means in an ever-changing landscape here. So again, my time's just about up. So I'm glad that we were able to add in the half an hour. Kudos to those that stuck around for longer than your normal meeting goes. But again, my name is Daniel Tututau. I'm in with the same crew with Billy and Dennis and Nigel and Ale. They're on the west side. So it's nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so our last candidate is Amy Hawkins, and this is District 5. Go ahead, Amy.
Thanks so much, and thanks for accommodating my schedule conflict. I'm coming to you live from Park City at the University of Utah Biochemistry Retreat. So I've seen a lot of cool ideas this morning about medical education, and I'm excited. And I'm also very, very cold because this is the only place that I can speak to you unmasked. So my name is Amy J. Hawkins. I live on the western part of District 5 in the Ballpark neighborhood. And I feel that the results-oriented community advocacy that so many of you participate in is what really sets me apart in this election. It's about showing up week after week as a volunteer, a community council chair, writing the grants, having the meetings, making the connections. I'm running for District 5 because I'm really concerned about public safety. And I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable. So I hope I'm coming across okay. I've got a great track record of success for our community in getting funding, $500,000 for bike and sidewalk and street crossing improvements on Kensington Avenue, in getting state level funding, $150,000 to develop educational resources for Utah high school students about opioids, because I think Utah's homelessness crisis is also a crisis of addiction. And I think we need population level solutions to begin to address it. And most relevant to today's meeting, I've been on the board of the Ballpark Community Council since 2016. I've chaired it since 2018. And even during the pandemic, we achieved record-breaking attendance at our online meetings. It was so validating. I am and I've been committed to working on homelessness and affordable housing. I've served on the Neighborhood Advisory Council for the Gail Miller Homeless Resource Center since it opened in 2019. There, and I've worked with surrounding business owners on Paramount Avenue like Alpha Munitions, like Bagley Ice, like Diggity Dog, to change street lighting and parking policies and to advocate for the demolition of a derelict building that was right in front of the Homeless Resource Center and a site of troubling crime. I also served on Mayor Mendenhall's transition team group on homelessness. She recognized that I've been involved in this conversation. I'm committed. And I was successful in leading the charge to push back against a third homeless shelter in the Ballpark community, the Brooklyn Avenue Overflow Shelter. I organized the only community engagement, a meeting with 107 community members and stakeholders and a media response. And I understand that from yesterday's meeting with Senator Niederhauser and the Utah Homelessness Council that they no longer support this proposal and have voted to rescind it. I serve on the board of the Housing Authority for Salt Lake City, where every month we meet to create affordable housing solutions. And I'll bring more results and connections as your city councilwoman because I have the experience needed to bring these results to our city. Of course, affordable housing and homelessness don't exist in a vacuum. These resources have to be placed in our neighborhoods in a deliberate manner. And last year and this year, I've also served on the steering committee for the Ballpark Station Area Plan with outside consultants. And we're developing this comprehensive long-term plan to reevaluate zoning in the area in the blocks around Smith's Ballpark, Dirks Field, to work on how to advocate this area year-round, not just during baseball games, as fun as they are. My main commitment is to increase public safety in our neighborhoods. I think you know that in 2020, District 5 saw a 62% increase in violent crime and a 250% increase in homicides. We had 7 instead of our usual 2. And that's a devastating loss of life. And we're feeling it in our neighborhood. And I just heard news yesterday about another family who's chosen to move out of the city. And it really, we're going to be less fortunate without our families. As a candidate, I was so happy to see 4 out of 5 candidates engage with our Salt Lake Police Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, and answer questions. And as a constituent, I was deeply disappointed that our council member was not there and did not respond to their emails. To solve the issues that we have with our city's relationship with public safety, to recruit and retain officers, we need to at least be willing to show up to the table. And I do. I'm also running because I think we as a country need more scientists involved in government. For decades, my profession believed our job was to conduct good experiments and present our data to elected officials, and then they would use that data to make the best policy decisions. That hasn't really worked out. We need more than just legal minds and real estate experts and planning experts to best represent the interests of the general public. We need scientific thinking to be at the table and part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jasmine, I think that's it.
Yep, I think we did it, Landon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Was I supposed to?
No, you're
sorry.
good.
Was I supposed to answer the questions as part of my 5 minutes?
Yeah. Do you want to take a minute to answer?
Would you like?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I thought your questions about how to serve as a city council member and bridge the divide between community councils and residents were great. I've really appreciated them. I'm committed to honoring agreements, and in practice, that means listening to stakeholders and being clear about opportunities, but also limits. Listening with clarity and transparency to keep from creating unreasonable expectations among stakeholders. Grappling with relevant data, filling in gaps in knowledge, engaging in good faith discussions and negotiations, and specifically with regard to planning. I think there are a lot of knowledge gaps there. Typically, constituents have very strong feelings with regard to certain aspects about buildings that are being proposed for their neighborhood, and they don't understand the limits with which the Planning Commission can push back on some of these projects. They don't understand there are only specific criteria that they can use to say, doesn't really meet design standards, or mitigation's not quite there. And some of those limitations need to be effectively communicated to our community members, and I'm happy to engage in that process. I think it would be great if some of those might even show up on the mailers that we send out to our community members, which community members really appreciate. I've got a clear track record of clear communication with stakeholders. I am super committed to reasonable, sustained exchanges of ideas that are grounded in mutual respect, supported by good faith engagement. And gosh, howdy, I think I've shown for years now that I'm deeply committed to community councils and what they represent in terms of the engagement process.
Great, thank you. And thanks to everybody for joining us today. This was great. Really good. So thank you. We meet again. What's our next meeting in November, Jasmine?
Oh, mine has already skipped to January. I was like, no, we don't have a meeting next time, Landon. Our next meeting is the 18th because this falls during Thanksgiving. So we moved it up a week.
So thank you. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you guys in November. Good luck in your races.